First of all, how did you get from being a writer to being a publisher?
Oh, by getting angry. um, I fell out with my publisher. And I won't go into the detail because she's dead now too, and blah blah. But something that she was going to republish, we came apart on, and I said, actually, you're in breach of the contract, and I'm withdrawing this from you. And sat and raged for a bit, and I thought, sod it, I'll do it myself. But I didn't want to be a self-publisher, and I was about to be made redundant for the second time in 5 years, and I thought, now if never else, this is the moment to just take a bit of control and do something that you're comfortable doing. And so if I'm going to do it, I should do it now, because mortgage is paid off, so there's no risk, not real terrifying risk. And I don't want to be in this position again. I don't want to be at somebody's beck and call. I don't want to be party to ridiculous bureaucratic procedures that are utterly unnecessary and just set out to make people miserable. But I want people to talk to. I don't want to work on my own. Better do some anthologies then, because that's like at least 20 people in one book. So, woof, way to go. And I thought, how am I going to achieve this? And I'd had several stories read at Liars League, so I knew the quality. So I emailed Katie at Liars League and said, is anybody doing anthologies? And I got this very stroppy email back because she thought I was doing it as a writer. People was asking us that sort of thing. So I emailed back, no, sweetie, I'm offering. And immediately sunlight and love that broke out, and we spent a very happy time exploring the archive. Initially, she just said, just help yourself, and I'll put you in touch with anybody you fancy publishing. And at that point, I think she'd been going 6 years, and there was acres of stuff. And Katie will know. So I said, all right. It was just coming up to the Olympics. I said, wouldn't it be a good idea if we did a London themed book? Because there'll be more people in London than there are ever going to be again, and they'll all want to take something home that's got London on the cover. That was the plan. This was January, and the Olympics were happening in July. I had no idea. It was completely not going to happen. We missed that target, but we had it out in time for the Paralympics. And Katie, as I knew, was able to say, right, this are all London themed in some way or other. And so that made it much easier as a starting point. And after that, I read through and found themes and explored other books we might do with them. So that was the starting point.
And so, I mean, so there's that, I was going to say part of your life. It's hardly parts.
All-consuming monster that eats my time. Yeah.
But then, something that I know very well is that, as well as that, you're an incredible editor and very in tune to other people's writing, and also a real champion of the way that people write. So what is it? And editing is not for everyone. What is it about the editing process that really lights you up?
I think it's when someone sends me something and either it's just perfect and I don't need to do anything to it, which is great, or I can see the spark in it, that the nugget that makes it special and unique. And most often that's about the story, and it's the writing that needs a bit of help. Occasionally the writing's amazing and it's the story that needs a bit of help. Not often. Or maybe I'm just not as good at spotting that. and it's the turning something that's good into something that's amazing. And when I can see how that can happen, I mean, sometimes the author won't play ball. I have had authors where I said, yeah, this isn't working, and are you up for an edit? And they go, how dare you? In which case I say, I'm not engaging then, because it's not good enough as it is. And generally speaking, the feedback I get on my edits is, oh my God, I didn't realize that this was what I had written, and what it could be. And yeah, I am quite radical about my ideas sometimes. Let's just take a slice out of this, shall we? As you know, I can be quite brutal. But yeah, and as you say, it's really important to me that it's honoring how that person writes, because when I was first editing and indeed first teaching, I was aware that there was a danger that I would just teach people how to write like I do, and I don't want competition in that particular market, thanks. So it's really important that it's about being the best them, whatever that is. And if someone's writing something that's in a genre I hate, then I won't go for it, because I can't make it better, because I'm not interested, and I don't read enough in that sector to know whether what they're doing's been done already. And I'm not really interested in retreading old ground.
No, and that's certainly my experience is exactly that. I think I told you the story of my latest experience during the launch of this year's Solstice Shorts, of hearing the story, and even before it got to you, there's a very good friend of mine who's really supportive of me, and so I actually spent the whole story going, is that me? Is that me? Do I really sound that good? I can't sound that good, So, but actually, I loved
to say, Sean did an amazing job reading it.
He did do.
He got the voice and the sort of the what is going on sort of level of innocence to it, that he just pitch perfect. I was so pleased. I remember when it came in, and I said, I'm not going to share this with you, but you're going to enjoy this.
and also, I loved your response when I kind of told you that I'd had a real imposter syndrome moment while it was being read, and you just went, don't be so silly. Yeah, you're right, actually. So yeah, I absolutely. I think that thing about from my own personal experience, I know that you just the generosity of the way that you honor the intentions of the writing, as you say, and the people who write it as well.
Yeah.
What is it that you enjoy about the reading of other people's unpublished work? So. Well, when you are enjoying it, obviously.
Yeah, there are some I don't. I think there's something about being potentially the first person to have seen it, and there are some writers, and they will back me up on this, that I just send them an email that says "fuck yes" or something along those lines. Before I've even finished reading it, and my rule of thumb is, if I'm partway through and I'm already planning the cover, they've got me hook, line, and sinker, and that can happen with a very imperfect piece as well. One of the first young adult books we published took an enormous amount of editing. But it was just a roller coaster, and that was I just emailed. I said, basically, yes, this is a yes. It is a yes, but it really needs a lot of editing. And what the hell happened at the end? And she came back and said, well, I had a baby. And I thought, oh, well, that explains it. And I said, how old is the baby? 2. Right. So are we up for the editing? It took about a year to get it sorted out, partly because it was also
Wow.
being published in South Africa, and
Mhm.
their editorial team had a rather different take on the book than I did. And in the end, we ended up with 2 different editions.
Wow.
Because there were just things that they were belly aching over that I was just like, and vice versa. So that was interesting. So there's slightly different editions.
Ah.
Not a lot, but basically I said, look, it was getting so complicated. I said, look, let them do their edits, send it to me, and then I will undo anything I'm really not happy with. But please make sure it's on search, it's identifiable, so I don't have to sort of second guess it. And I was just like, yeah, undo that bit and undo that bit and put this in here, and please don't do any of this product placement.
Yeah. And speaking of product placement, in a way, I would imagine having your own publishing press that that would be an avenue to publish your own work, and yet as we've already talked about, you mentioned Dowry Blade being published by Arachne, but that's not the case for both Bog Mermaid or Fish in the Desert, even as it's kind of you know, entering the latter stage of being prepared for a final first draft, I suppose. But what's the reasoning behind that?
I have found that in terms of selling in the widest possible sense, the product that Arachne produces, I'm fine when it's someone else's, but I get imposter syndrome when I'm trying to sell my own, and which is partly why I was busy talking it down. Yeah, we all fall into this trap.
That's interesting. So having gone through the process of self-publishing,
I'm not comfortable with it. I mean, I'm happy to put a short story into an anthology if we're short of something.
But there's not many examples of that, though, is there?
No. Well, I write one and then I don't need it, so I've got a lot of time themed stories tucked away, which would have gone into a Solstice Shorts anthology and didn't.
Or maybe there's a whole anthology of yours on its own to come out at some point.
Well, there's 2 collections of short stories written, ready. Yeah, there's a fantasy broadly based one and a contemporary broadly based one that periodically I shunt out in front of people who are doing competitions or whatever, and they don't pay any attention.
Are those the 2 that I've read?
Yeah, Grounded and North.
Shame on them. Shame on them. As I say, that's what prompted this whole discussion in the first place, by me assuming it was an Arachne anthology. Yeah, exactly. Multiple authors.
I'll write this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're doing an enormous amount. You've already alluded to the fact that writing is partly down to, and I'm really glad it is, to me on a Wednesday going, we talking at 12:30, what have you got for me? But how do you manage being a publisher, being an editor, being a teacher, being a writer, and maintaining a partnership, having friends, and a cat that very much loves you and needs your attention?
Yes.
Sorry, Glorious Julian. There we go.
The Glorious Julian. Yeah.
There we go.
Yep. Who strangely is still asleep.
Wow.
Mind you, that's because he was up half the bloody night trying to get into my glass of water at 2 o'clock. Insisting I run a tap for him. I was wide awake after that. Well, actually, so some of the way I manage all this is my not always sleeping. Yeah, the most recent, the putting together of A Fish in the Desert as a single document and first run through edit was done at 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 days running.
Wow.
the thinking behind the let's become a publisher, apart from being cross with other people, was that I would be thinking about writing all the time. And that is certainly true when I'm not thinking about accounts and admin and marketing, but still I am, I am thinking about writing all the time. And there is nothing so good for your own writing as seeing the things that you do served up to you by someone else. And you think, okay, that must be a cliche then. Somehow it's either a cliche or it's in the zeitgeist and I need to sidestep. Don't do that. Not because they're necessarily doing it badly. You know, sometimes it can be beautiful, and I think, yeah, I do that. I write beautifully like that too. But this person who has potentially not been published at all is writing this. So somewhere we're picking this up from somewhere, and I need to have a rethink about whether that is what I want to be doing. That sounds a bit arrogant, really, doesn't it? But it's just about having my antennae on all the time.
I don't think arrogant. I think it sounds like actually. I was thinking quite the opposite in some ways, because often writers settle into a style and then, well, particularly if it's commercial, to be fair, they've got to serve a new one up every 7 or 8 months, and it can fall into you know, a real pattern. But what you're describing is the opposite of that. It's kind of thinking about the process and about the structure continually, which feels like a really important thing to be doing, because it's about not repeating yourself then, isn't it? It's
about not repeating myself, but it's also about, I think I don't really switch off much. And you know, when I'm awake in the night, I think, right, okay, well, let's untangle something about whichever thing I'm writing at the time, or think about these half-started dozen other novels, and which one I might attempt to tweak next. And it's just, I think that's why I can do the writing in only 2 hours a week, because I've done all the thinking. So when I sit down, I'm ready. That's my routine. My routine is to, measure twice, cut once, think constantly, write immediately. And I think that's why you were constantly saying, how is this a first draft? Well, it isn't. I've drafted it 8 times in my head.
That's fine, but I still maintain, how is this a first draft after 9 years?
Some of them are more first draft than others, aren't they?
Well, yes, that's true, but you know, after 9 years of the same pig-in novel, in my case, you know. Okay, so well, that kind of brings me to the end of the questions that I have. I mean, I've already stated more than once about my enthusiasm for you as a writer, and you know, lucky enough to have you as a friend as well. So is there anything else that you'd like to say, share, do?
Well, what new thing that Arachne are doing, we're doing audiobooks, which is a whole new ball game. We've done one before, and that was out of lockdown and with the author, so that was relatively simple. You know, just escort Kate to studio and sit there smiling eagerly while she does a fantastic reading. And now I'm into auditioning author actors and having to do sort of, it's almost like a screen test of what their technical setup is and whether it's going to be good enough, and sending that off to the producer saying, will this do, because I really want to use this actor, and you know, they haven't got a proper studio set up, and can you hear any background noise? I can't, you know, and that sort of thing, which is absolutely fascinating and time consuming. And I'm just thinking, you know, when I get the proofs, you know, that's 8 hours of listening as opposed to 3 hours of reading, and that's going to be quite a challenge, but I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm just, because one of the when I'm reading, I hear a voice, and it was interesting talking to the actors well, the authors rather, about what voice they wanted, and thinking, oh, interesting. Okay, we'll see. So it's exciting.
Yeah,
and we've got Sophie Aldred reading Claire Owen's Zed and the Cormorants, and she's, and as soon as we started thinking about it, I thought, I wonder if she would, because the thing about Sophie is she can sound absolutely convincing as a 13-year-old or a 90-year-old, and she's going to need to do both.
That's really cool.
And in a Cornish accent some of the time.
Yeah, that's very exciting. You know, I love an audiobook, so
yeah. Well, it's you banging on about audio that's sort of been sort of weaseling around in the back of my brain, and I think I was persuaded while I was doing the research for the Dust Bowl novel. There was a book that was only available as audio, so I thought, okay, well, and nobody I'd ever heard of reading it, and she did such a good job. I was gripped. I couldn't, I was carrying it around the house with me. I was listening while I was cooking. I like a challenge, and I like doing new things. And
I know from Solstice that you pick really, really well, and also in terms of being excited by audiobooks, you saw my reaction to meeting Saul Reichlin, didn't you?
Yeah. Saul's on the list to potentially do something, but it's just finding the right book.
Yeah, I was simpering. I was when I met him.
Yeah, you were slightly fanboying, weren't
you? and bought 3 more books with him, reading them as soon as I got back. Val McDermott was high on the list after that. So okay, anything else before we close?
I think that's it, don't you?
I
think no interruptions from Julian. Astonishing.
I know. No, glorious Julian. Yeah, I'd like to say the same about my greyhound Albert, but he's been looking at me for the last hour and a half like, aren't you going to do anything? Which frankly I'm not, because I usually take him out for a walk at 1, so he's gonna have to wait. But no, it's been a real pleasure. I've been looking forward to this, Cherry, and thank you for agreeing to do this as well.
Thank you for offering.